Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be bringing you a Blu-ray haul from Nova Media, and if you guys are not familiar with Nova Media and who they are a boutique Blu-ray label located in South Korea, represent, and because of that I was like, I gotta check these guys out because I've never purchased anything from Nova Media before, and it was due to a recommendation from one of my subscribers, so thank you to this subscriber right here. I am blanking on the name right now, but I'm going to put your name on blast right now, so thank you very much, because shopping from Nova Media was like picking candy from my nostalgia bank. It was insane what kind of options they had for movies, and not just any kind of Blu-rays that you can buy from any retailer, but these are very particularly packaged and they are just beautiful. But with that comes a cost, because with beauty comes a cost. That is a formula for life right there. If you're buying anything internationally, of course you should be expecting high international shipping costs. That's a given. But I was not expecting it to be this big. Yeah, buddy, you're reading that right. That freaked me that freaked me out. Okay, it just freaked me out. I'm trying to swear less, but that's a big fucking number. That was insane. And I was like, what is going on? Am I going nuts? Is my computer going nuts? I refreshed like 17 times and then I realized, no, Brandon, you're not going crazy. At least not today. What actually happened was that there are two different options for shipping, or I believe there's 2 to 3, but only one of them actually matters. Thankfully, I went with the normal shipping cost, and because of that, I got my Blu-ray labels in very perfect condition. Thank you to Nova Media and their shipping process. I was surprised because for most international shipping, every time I receive something, there's some kind of problem with it. There's some dink on the packages, or there's some dog earring or something, but this was perfect. The way they bubble wrapped and everything was just, it was perfection. It was like the stats in Moneyball. It was just, magnificent. So, thank you Nova Media again. But yeah, if you guys are interested in Nova Media, I'll leave a link to their website down below. If you guys have already heard of them, then I am just beating around the bush. So I will get right into my haul. But before I do that, actually, I'm sorry I have to do this, but if you're new to this channel and you are not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and also like the video at the end if you enjoyed it. There was just something really charming about having that selection and knowing that I could go revisit movies from my childhood that I really enjoyed, that I rewatched on DVD and VHS numerous amounts of times, and now I can get them in packaging that's worthy of how I remember them. And I don't know, something about that, and also the fact that they're a Korean company, I felt like a bigger connection to that. I mean, it's a far-fetched connection, but it's still something for me that I related with and I really enjoyed, so buying these was a no-brainer. Now, when I talk about movies from my childhood that I look back on and I'm like, maybe they're not as good as I remember, but for some reason I still have a very keen fondness for them, I think of this movie, which is the first movie that I picked up from Nova Media. Love Actually is one of the cheesiest and one of the most endearing holiday movies. I guess you could call it a romantic comedy. It just has every British star you could ever think of. If you've watched this movie, I bet half of them were in Harry Potter. I'm pretty sure half of them were in Harry Potter or in some huge franchise that everyone's heard of. This movie basically kickstarted a lot of people's careers, and because of that, I find it really rewatchable. Looking at it now with adult eyes, I don't find a lot of the characters to be likable or even good people. I mean, Andrew Lincoln's character is pretty much one of the biggest scumbags, one of the worst friends you could ever think of. But back then, it was charming, it was cute, and I mean, he was handsome, so a guy coming out and basically confessing his love to his best friend's wife while he's watching TV or something it's one of the worst things you could do to a friend, but he did it and everyone loved it until 10 years later they realized, hey, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. But I still really enjoy this movie. I think it's one of those go-to holiday movies that are kind of harmless. Yes, half of the characters are essentially bad people, and for some reason we're supposed to find a lot of them endearing or charming, and for some reason there's an excessive amount of fat shaming for this young woman in this movie who's not fat at all, by modern sensibilities. I don't know, maybe back then it was different. I'm pretty sure it was different, but I was a kid at the time. Anyways, revisiting this movie, there's a lot of things that haven't aged well, but I don't know, I just find it really fun to watch. I can turn it on, I can watch it with my girlfriend, I can watch it with my family. It's just one of those, I don't know, feel good, harmless movies. And that is why I chose Love Actually. It's just a classic for me, and it's just something I want to have around. Maybe someday I'll show this to my niece and nephew when they're a little bit older, and maybe they'll realize how bad these people are as well. So yeah, Love Actually. Now this next movie is considered a classic, and I'm sure half of the world has already heard of it, but it was a movie that I was looking for, and I'm so glad that I found it in Nova Media. That movie is Amelie. Amelie is a very fun romantic comedy directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. This is one of those movies that when I first watched it, it immediately had an impact on me. I was like, wow, I didn't know you could do romance in this way. It felt so unique. And of course, there are so many reasons why you can applaud this movie. This movie to many is just an essential. I didn't know that you could do a romantic comedy in the style that Jean-Pierre Jeunet did, and it was just astounding. I was just watching this movie and I was like, wow, I love that from beginning to end. And there's a reason it's a classic. I could talk this movie to death someday, but I will not do that today. But obviously, if you have not heard of Amelie, I recommend you go watch it. But like half the world, you have seen this movie. It's a movie that really impacted me during my childhood, and it's one of those movies that I am not ashamed of liking. It is just that good. So, Amelie. Now this next movie I saw when it came out. I was super excited that it was coming out on 4K through Nova Media. That movie is Kick-Ass, one of the most kick-ass superhero movies you will ever watch. It's obviously a grounded superhero tale. It's not conventional like our modern day comic book movies, and it's one of those movies that I feel like it just gets better with time. It just kind of satirizes the comic book industry. It satirizes comic book heroes, and it takes it in a grounded and realistic way, and it's just really refreshing to watch, especially when you see a lot of the stars in this movie. You got Nicolas Cage, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, you have Chloe Grace Moretz. You just have an all-star cast, and it's just a movie that you can turn on, you can watch it in the background, and you can peek over if you're doing some work and be like, it's a kick-ass movie. Yeah, it's a movie that's super easy to recommend. It, for me, is a classic. It's obviously something I watched when I was a kid, and it still holds up. So guys, if you haven't seen Kick-Ass, please go see Kick-Ass. This is such a cool steelbook edition, and it comes with a really cool booklet that talks about the movie. Sadly, it's in a language that I'm not very good at. The entire booklet is in Korean, so obviously you're buying it from Korea, and with that comes a lot of Korean. So if you're expecting it to be written in English, then get those. Oh my god, this is taking me a really long time to put back in. If you're expecting it to be in English, oh my god, it's in. I don't know why you would expect that. Just don't expect that. So luckily the movie does come with an English speaking option, so you will get the full experience that you had when watching this movie originally. But yeah, if that's keeping you from buying this movie, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. This movie is amazing, and I love it to death, and that is why I love Kick-Ass. Thank you for watching my presentation. All right, next movie. Now this next movie is a movie that, as a kid, it messed me up, man. I watched this and I was like, I don't know if I liked what I saw, but it definitely stuck around, and that movie is Perfume. Perfume was such a unique movie for me because it introduced me to the concept of serial killers. Way before Silence of the Lambs, way before any of the Hannibal Lecter movies. This kind of introduced me to that concept in a very weirdly beautiful way, and not glorifying serial killers at all, but the way the movie's presented and the way that it uses narration and the way that the story kind of grows and the way that we kind of see who this guy is and where he came from. It tells that story in a very beautiful way, but this character and this human being, he's a monster. No doubt about that. He's a terrible person. But man, the acting is incredible, and it's one of those movies that really holds up in the fact that, I don't know, just the way that they tied in the beauty of fragrance and murder together was something that was really unique and interesting about it, that stuck with me, especially the process of how he gets the scent from his victims. Yeah, watch it for yourself if you haven't seen this movie. I feel like it's a little bit of a hidden gem because I don't hear a lot of people talk about this movie. It's also one of the first performances from Ben Whishaw that I've ever seen. If you don't know who Ben Whishaw is, he's the new Q from the recent Bond movies. But yeah, he puts out a stellar performance in this movie as the leading man, leading monster, whatever you want to call it. I just think it's a really great movie, and I'm really happy I picked it up. So go check it out if you can. Perfume. Now, speaking of movies from my childhood that kind of messed me up, this next one messed me up in a very different way. As a kid who is learning more about his body, learning more... This is gross. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to take you there. I'm turning the car around. That one. But this next movie was a movie that kind of resonated with me during my childhood in a way that, let's just say, was not appropriate. That movie is Sex is Zero. This is just one of those movies that you shouldn't watch with your family. Obviously, the title Sex is Zero, so don't watch it with your family. But it's basically the American Pie of Korea, and that's all I'll say about it. There is a particular scene in this movie with a frying pan, and it's really gross. It's really gross, and not gross in like a Saw kind of gross. It's gross in like a, oh my god, I've thought about that before. And I don't think I wanted to see what would happen if they actually did it. But they did it, and it was really gross. If you know what scene I'm talking about, ew, right? Gross. Anyway, Sex is Zero. Now this next movie is one of my favorite movies ever. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies by far. It's a movie that I can revisit at any point in my life, and I feel like I have a deep connection to it. It's just a movie that feels timeless. There are performances in it that still shake me to my core. That movie is Good Will Hunting. This movie changed my life. It changed my outlook on filmmaking. It changed my outlook on screenwriting. It just made me really appreciate great character work, great writing, great performances. It raised the bar. And for myself, this is a perfect movie. This movie hit it out the park at the Oscars, so I'm basically preaching to the choir. First and foremost, Robin Williams' performance. I think this is his best performance. I know a lot of people say 1 Hour Photo is one of his best and most underrated, but nothing beats his performance in Good Will Hunting. And I think this is Matt Damon's best as well, and Minnie Driver is so good. Every actor in this film is essentially giving their A game, and it is a marvel to watch. I mean, this is just a powerhouse movie, and just the character development they do for Will is just amazing. It's one of those movies where you're rooting for him. You know he's kind of a bastard, you know he's kind of a dick, but you can't help but root for this guy because you know that he has more potential, and all the characters around him understand that as well. And his relationship with Sean and the conversations that they have and the way that they grow, it's just unbeatable. I haven't seen a movie develop a relationship like this in such a long time, and I watch it again and again and again, and every time it feels refreshing and I catch something new. So Gus Van Sant did an amazing job with this movie. It is, it's the best. I gotta see About a Girl. That is all I'll say. Wow, perfect movie. Good Will Hunting. Now this next movie is another movie that really shocked me as a kid. This movie really creeped me out. It's a movie that has been parodied if you have seen Scary Movie 3. It was around that time. This movie is directed by Alejandro Amenabar and it stars Nicole Kidman. That movie is The Others, and this movie scared the bejesus out of me as a kid. This movie made me very scared of its atmosphere. It was the first movie where I felt the horror just around the characters. I felt like essentially they were never safe, and I felt like everything that was happening for a reason. It's just one of those movies that really stuck with me, and obviously there's some iconic parts about the movie like I am your daughter and things like that which really stick out and make the movie memorable. And obviously, like I said before, it's been parodied countless amount of times. But aside from all of that, this movie is shot magnificently. I mean, the way that they capture atmosphere in this movie, using candlelight to light their scenes or using heavy fog around the entire mansion, it's just everything about this movie just feels eerie, and it feels like there's something wrong. And the twist in this movie is, wow, it's one of those endings that you're like, if I rewatch this movie, I am going to try to find every single plot hole in it. And for me, I didn't find a lot. I rewatched it and I was like, yeah, this movie still holds up. It's still incredible. And just the performances from Nicole Kidman and those two kids, it's just great. All the aspects of this movie feel like they're thought out. There are things that are tied into the actual filmmaking of this movie, such as the lighting. There's a reason why it's candlelit for a lot of the movie, and I won't go into that territory because those are things that I want you to find out if you haven't seen the movie. But if you have seen the movie, how awesome is it? I mean, it's great. It's underrated in my opinion. So yeah, The Others. Now this next movie I'm going to be talking about is a movie directed by Jonathan Glazer starring Scarlett Johansson. That movie is Under the Skin, which is a movie that got under my skin. This is one of those movies that I don't know why I needed to get it, but I had to have it because I remember when I first watched this movie, I was really confused by the themes and overall shooting style of this. Under the Skin for me was a movie that I wouldn't recommend you watch on a date night. It's not one of those movies at all. It's definitely a thinker. It's one of those movies that has a very particular style. Jonathan Glazer decides to go for a cinema verite or a guerrilla style of filmmaking where a lot of the actors characters in the movie aren't actually actors, they're actually just people that Scarlett Johansson drives up to and talks to. It's a very unique way of storytelling, especially if you're doing an alien invasion story, which essentially Under the Skin is. I won't go into too many details about it, but it's just a movie that really makes you feel icky inside. It makes you look at humanity in a very dark light. It makes you feel a little bit disgusted and you don't know why. It's a study on what it's like to be disconnected from humanity and what that looks like from an outside observer. It's not something I'd recommend on like a date night or anything like that, but it's a good movie. Scarlett Johansson is incredible in this movie. She gives one of the best performances, and honestly, it's just a sight to see an Asian actress take over Hollywood like this. So Scarlett, we are so happy for your success, honey. Thank you so much. You're doing so much for representation. We love you. Watch it on your own time when you have time and you want to be depressed. Under the Skin. All right. Oh, ow. Shit! That hurt. Okay, now this next movie is a movie that I really enjoyed from my childhood. It's one of those underrated movies that, upon rewatch, it's like, it's not a perfect movie, and it's not even close to being a great movie, but it's just so damn fun. It's The Brothers Grimm. I love this movie. I remember forcing my girlfriend to watch it with me, and by force I mean lightly push because she was interested in watching it too. But The Brothers Grimm is just one of those movies that I can just turn on at any time and just be connected to watching it from my huge mound of a TV and watching it with the antennas sticking out. And I just remember just sitting down and just being immersed into this world of Grimm's fairy tales. You get to see these actors be essentially characters that you've never really seen them in before, and if you haven't seen this movie, it's just a sight to see because it's very quirky, it has a very unique style, it feels like it's not taking itself too seriously, and that's one of the reasons why I really like this movie. It's not like that Gretel and Hansel movie with Jeremy Renner where it's just very serious action, blah 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 blah. It's very loose, and it feels like a movie you can just turn on and have fun, and that's why I really respect this movie. Alongside Monica Bellucci, who is just one of my biggest crushes when I was a kid. I remember just being in love with Monica Bellucci as a kid. Yeah, The Brothers Grimm. It's a fantastic movie. I have a lot of bias though, so don't trust me. But I'd say watch it when you can. If you find it on streaming somewhere, go watch it. There's just a lot of charm in this movie. There's a lot of fun that they do with the Grimm's fairy tales, and it's a movie that the CG hasn't aged well. But if you really like the performances, if you really like these actors, you'll have a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's just something that I needed to have, and I'm glad that I have it. The Brothers Grimm. Now this next movie is a movie I watched as a kid, and I really connected with this kid just because I felt that if I were to ever go to Korea and if I were ever to go meet my relatives over there, I would have a very similar experience as him. Maybe not the same, but very similar. But anyways, that movie is The Way Home. This is just one of those coming of age movies, or just kind of one of those movies that are targeted towards kids, but also it's just a very touching family movie. It's a movie about reconnecting with your elders, reconnecting and learning more about them through conversation, learning about them through experience. It's just a very enlightening movie, and I connect with it a lot because of the Korean culture. It's just one of those things where I remember being a bratty kid. I remember being a kid who didn't know why we had to respect our elders. I didn't understand their history. I didn't understand their story, and it was just something that I didn't want to wrap my head around because I was too busy being a kid, too busy being immature, and too busy wanting things. And so The Way Home was a very refreshing movie for me because you get to see it through this kid's eyes, and we get to see his relationship grow with his grandmother, and he feels like he's being abandoned by his family. He feels like he's being thrown in this situation because he's being punished by God or whatever, and he thinks it's so horrible. But throughout the movie, you get so charmed by this grandmother, and she's just doing these little acts of love, and you just get so endeared to her character. And when I was watching that as a kid, it was sort of a lesson for me to be a better person, be a better human being. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of value for a movie like that if it can teach you a valuable lesson, and if you can see yourself in a character and then watch that character grow. It's essentially a life lesson for you to get off your ass and do something. Treat your elders with respect. Now, obviously, there are some elders we shouldn't treat with respect because they're working in Congress. Zing. But anyways, The Way Home is one of those movies where you look at your family in a very new light. We take things for granted in our own lives, and this movie makes you reevaluate that in a very charming and very heartwarming way. This is just a movie that was just a no-brainer for me because it taught me such a valuable lesson. It's a very, very touching movie, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest you do. That movie is The Way Home. So, on to my last movie. Now, this last movie that I'm going to be talking about isn't one of the most heart-pounding or most exciting movies, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That movie is A Serious Man. Now, it's ironic that this movie is called A Serious Man, essentially because Michael Stuhlbarg's character is a person that is not taken serious by anyone. His wife, his co-workers, the people that he teaches, no one takes this guy seriously, and this guy is questioning his life the entire time. He's questioning the meaning of it all, and I think that's just something that Ethan and Joel Coen capture very greatly, which is that dramatic irony and essentially what is the meaning of all of life and why are we doing anything that we do. And it's a very nihilist approach, it's a very cynical approach, but that's something I really enjoy about the Coen brothers. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but this is a Coen brothers movie. Essentially, Michael Stuhlbarg's character in this movie is just someone that you want to root for, but he makes it very hard on himself because he doesn't take enough action. He kind of passively goes through life and just questions everything. And it's not that he makes a series of bad decisions like Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems, but it's because he's so passive to everything. It's because he's so willing to just bend over for everyone that you look at him and you're like, of course this guy's getting stepped on. Like there's nothing that he's doing to fight back. And because of that, we watch a guy who's questioning his life, he's questioning his beliefs, he's questioning everything, his rabbis, and you want to root for the guy, but you just realize he's just chasing his own tail at this point. And that's just something that I think the Coen brothers write really well, which are characters that have no real means to an end. They're just kind of asking questions and wondering what is the purpose of it all. And then in the end, does he find out? If you know the Coen brothers, you guess. And that is A Serious Man. That sums up my Nova Media haul. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for sitting through all of that. The amount of takes that I had to go through to just make sure I said everything I wanted to say about these. It's ridiculous. So I hope I got through all of that. If you enjoyed this, please remember to hit that subscribe button if you are not yet subscribed, and also hit that like button and leave a comment down below if you feel compelled to do so. All that aside, thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys enjoying these videos. I love doing them. They're so much fun, just talking about movies that I love, and I hope you feed off that enjoyment as well. So, as always, I will see you later.